All right, thanks everyone for sticking around for this bonus episode. Now, we talked last week in the bonus episode about our favorite TV shows, and we talked about some shows that were really influential that we grew up watching, and as
Classic TV shows,
classic
right? I
TV
mean,
shows. Yeah,
some of them overlap, but if we get into more modern TV shows, I got a whole other list. Just saying.
right. That's right. You do watch a lot of shows that you recommend to me. We our changing habits have changed. Our viewing habits have changed a lot over the years. But yeah, we talked about classic shows. So I wanted to do a deeper dive into that and talk about a specific show that was a huge part of my life growing up and everyone else. And we both forgot to put it on the list. Well, I forgot to put it on my list, which was The Twilight Zone, right? Good show. Everyone loves it. It's been revived maybe 4 times over the decades since it's been released, right? There's the original version with Rod Serling. They had like an edgy kind of 90s, late 80s, 90s version. There was one in the early 2000s, and then there's the current one that's airing now. So Twilight Zone, huge part of people's lives. So you can imagine my surprise when you said, I don't remember that much about it. It kind of caught me off guard. You were like, I didn't really, I watched it, but I don't really know anyone that really didn't stand out to me. So I was like, okay, what are we going to talk about then if we can't talk about the Twilight Zone? And we are going to talk about the Twilight Zone, just not today. But Star Trek: The Next Generation was also on both of our lists.
Yep.
It is a huge show for us. It was our introduction, and it turned us into Trekkies. It really formed our love of Star Trek. So it goes without saying we have to talk about Star Trek, right? I feel that I'm a Trekkie more than I love Star Wars or Stargate or anything else. What about you? Are you Star Trek first or Star Wars? Or?
I don't know.
Well,
I don't
so
know, honestly. I think I rewatch Stargate Atlantis
mhm.
more than I rewatch any of the other stuff.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
So we had a debate, and I believe you were a part of it way back when we were at Stewart and all of us, because we're all IT nerds, so we're all Trekkies or Star Wars fans or just Star stuff in general. And one of our coworkers mentioned like, hey, you can't one has to be your favorite. You can't just love everything equally. And they got everyone to thinking, and some people were like, yeah, I'm a Trekkie. I love Star Trek. That's what I would choose first. Other people, Star Wars, definitely. At the time, we didn't have all of the TV shows and all of the extended lore and stuff that we did, but a lot of people said, no, Star Wars that's it for me. That's my favorite. Some people said Stargate and other stuff, but yeah, I didn't realize it, but you can't love all of them equally. One has to be your favorite.
I
And
don't
for
know.
me, that's Star Trek,
I watch I watch Strange New Worlds, which is the newest and
right?
latest and greatest and is really really good. I
Right?
tried watching Discovery. I think I need to watch the later seasons of Discovery. I just struggled with
No, it
some of the
goes
plot
downhill.
lines. Does it? Okay,
It
then
goes
I won't watch
downhill.
it. But
It
I
is good
watch.
though.
If they came out with the new Stargate series, I would watch it.
Yep.
Every new Star Wars series that they come out with, which is a lot,
Yep.
right? Every single one I watch. So I don't know. I'll just disagree. But let's talk about these episodes because this was pretty fun. I got to tell you, I have 6
Okay.
because I know you said you had dibs on some, and we
Right.
can't overlap. So I've got 6 in case we have overlap here.
Okay. Okay. So I'm with you. It's hard to pick three, but we didn't want this to be an hour long episode. So let's jump into it. We'll do from worst, not worst, because worst is not a good word for it. But let's do it from least to best favorite. So save your number one for last. All right.
Okay.
So starting with number three, you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll go.
Okay.
I'll go with this one. So this is the nth degree.
Okay.
So the Enterprise got called out to the Argus array
Mm-hmm.
because it was having some sort of a malfunction, and it ended up going into catastrophic failure. And the Argus array was this massive space station thing, and
I remember. Yep.
Barclay, if I remember right, got zapped with something. And all of a sudden he can think faster than the Enterprise computer.
Okay, I remember that. Yep. Barkley
Yeah,
was always
yeah,
an interesting character. I always
yeah.
loved him. Even when he was
Yep.
on Voyager, he was always a great character.
So they had a plan for how they were going to stop the cascading failure, and they're on the computer, and he and Geordi and somebody else, they're down in engineering, and they're typing into the computer. They don't really type, right? They just hit certain buttons, which
Right.
I don't understand how they knew what the button was doing. But anyway, they're doing this, and they're trying to keep ahead of it, and they're just not getting ahead of the failure. And Barclay finally stands up and goes, "This computer is just too slow." And he walks into the holodeck and he says, "Computer, build a neural array." And I know I'm getting this wrong. Please don't at me and get mad at me for getting this wrong. But it's been a while since I watched the whole thing. And the computer's like, "There are no specifications for this thing in the computer." He's like, "That's fine. Here's how you build it." And the next thing you know, right, Barclay's sitting on this throne thing with lasers shooting into his head,
Yep.
and he stopped the catastrophic failure on the array. And Picard's like, "Geordi, how did you do that?" And he's like, "I didn't." And then all of a sudden you hear Barclay as the computer going, "Hi, Captain, it was me," that
Yeah.
kind of thing. So
I forgot about that one. That was a really good one.
yeah,
Yeah.
I really like that just because it was funny. It was complete nonsense, right?
Hmm.
But I always like the stuff with the holodecks, just because I
Yeah.
thought, that was really, really cool to be able to go in and do stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So my number three, and it's probably the same for all three of my picks. They're kind of the I guess general everybody's favorite picks, right? But these are truly like my favorite picks. So number three for me is Iborg. Now, this is after the events of Best of Both Worlds. So Picard hates the Borg for what they did to him, what they made, they made him kill all of the people that he did. So he has a deep seated hate for the Borg, right? The team was on an away mission and they stumbled upon a crash site, and the lone survivor from the crash site was a Borg, right? So Worf is like, "Man, just kill it and let's go." Riker's like talking to Picard, like, "I don't know." Worf said, "Let's kill it. Let's get back to the ship." Picard is like, "Okay, yeah, just take care of it. Let's just go." And Dr. Crusher is like, "We can't do that. We can't
Yep.
leave this thing here. We have to bring it back on the ship." So I think what stood out for me in this episode is just seeing how everyone treated the situation of having this deadly person, not person, I don't know, because he's a Borg, this deadly entity on the ship, and how everybody reacts to it. How the angry people are like, "Kill it and get rid of it, shoot it out into space," and other people are like, "No, it's still a person, it's still a being. We can't just do it like that." And one of the things that stood out to me was that episode was Picard and Patrick Stewart and Whoopi Goldberg. They were just dynamite on on
Yeah.
on the show. We know their chemistry together was just even later on my list too. I'll bring up another example of that. But they were having a conversation, and she was like, "Just kill it." The Borg wiped out her race
Right.
completely. They were
She's it.
assimilated. Yes. And so you understand her hate. Picard, they basically kidnapped him, assimilated him, and made him wipe out races and stuff like that. So they both hate it. And Picard, being the level-headed person he is, she's like, "Just kill it. Just what are you doing? Let's get rid of this thing." And he's like, "No, go down and talk to it, and you'll see that this is not the Borg that we've been dealing with."
Right.
Just awesome. Just an excellent episode. So a lot of backstory, a lot of lore and stuff to be able to understand people's feelings about the Borg. So you can't just watch this one and understand it, but it still is a really good watch.
Yeah.
So Iborg is my third pick.
Well, if I remember right, he becomes Hugh.
Hugh, yes,
And in Star Trek Picard,
right.
season 1, he's the director of the Borg reclamation project where they're trying to reclaim that Borg
That's
cube.
right. That's right. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, that was him. I forgot about that. I watched
Yeah.
this season once through. I hadn't rewatched it. I'm going to rewatch it as I get a chance to watch the third season. But yeah,
Yeah.
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 Really good
So,
episode. So what do you have for number 2?
all right, Memory Alpha. I
Okay, I don't
always like
remember
the
that one.
dynamic between Crusher and Picard. And if you
Yep.
watch the last season of Picard, it's all about Crusher and Picard,
Right.
right? And
Right.
I won't spoil it for anybody. Have you watched the last season yet?
No, of Picard, no,
Okay, I'm
not
not
yet.
spoiling it, so
Yep.
I won't spoil it. But anyway, so they get captured and they escape from a facility and they realize that their minds are linked.
Oh,
So
I
they
remember
can
this episode.
hear
Yep.
each other's thoughts,
Yep.
which because you always wondered whether they were really that close and had that kind of a relationship or not. And
Right.
then you get this episode and you're like, oh man. But the biggest quote, and I've actually used this in a ton of my leadership stuff. It's amazing how many things you can draw out of TV shows that can give
Right.
leadership examples. But the one quote I remember is they're trying to figure out which way to go and they're asking each other. And finally, Picard says, we got to go this way. And they start down the path and she stops and looks at him and goes,
Yeah.
you
don't know.
have no clue
Yeah. You don't
which
know
way
where
we
we're
need to
going.
go.
Yep.
And he's like, nope, but I'm the captain. And the captain cannot appear to be vulnerable and not know. Now,
Right.
you can go on both sides of this from a leadership standpoint. It's actually not true. Being vulnerable as a leader is a good thing because then you allow other people to step up and they realize they can be vulnerable and don't have to have all the answers, blah, 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 blah. But
yeah.
Anyway, I just love that whole episode about them with their minds linked and that dynamic that they have between them. And I always will remember that quote.
Right. Right. I remember that episode too. It was a good one because it we always thought there was something because Beverly's ex-husband, not ex-husband, her deceased husband and Picard were friends, and Picard had to step up and help with Wesley and
Yeah.
protect it. And it always just kind of seemed ambiguous, but like maybe there was something more to their relationship and stuff like that. Now, I remember this episode left more questions than answers, but it
Yeah.
really kind of formed a picture around their relationship and stuff. So yeah, don't spoil anything for me for the last season of Picard, but hopefully a lot of those questions were answered.
I won't, but you need to watch that season and then we need to do a bonus episode about Picard in
Right.
general.
Just Picard.
Actually,
Okay.
we probably could do multiple bonus episodes. We should probably do a season 1, season 2, and a season 3 because they were all different.
Right. I see some
So,
guys, on YouTube that I subscribe to. They'll do it episode by episode kind of
yeah.
things, and it's what, just 8 episodes or 10 episodes.
So,
Okay. So yeah.
let's think about that.
Okay.
All right. What's your number 2?
So number 2 is All Good Things. Now this happens to be the last episode, the series finale of Star Trek: The Next Generation, and we came full circle back to the courtroom from Encounter at Farpoint, which was the first episode, and we find out the trial was never over, except for humanity being on trial. There's Picard himself, and there's some anomaly. There's always some anomaly in space, and Picard is the reason why humanity is destroyed. Right. So what's cool about this episode is that this anomaly is forming, but it's forming at different points in history, right? So it's pulling Picard from different points of his life into all of these different time frames. Now he keeps his current consciousness, so he knows what's going on. He has all of his memories and all of his experiences, but he's put back into when the crew was brand new. He was just getting to know. So he formed these bonds and these relationships with all of these different people. But when he's forced back into the past, although he still has those memories, he's at that point. And so it seems like he's going crazy, or he has Alzheimer's or something like that when he's speaking to someone that he formed the relationships over years with, but he's speaking to them as though he's known them for years, and they're like,
Right.
I've only just met you. I just got on the ship 5 days ago. I don't know you like that. Why are you talking to me, crazy? But really good episode. We really got to see Patrick Stewart really act. And now he's done that for 7 seasons, right? We've really seen him go, but it seems like this episode was written specifically about Picard, his character, and we really got to see him really show who Patrick Stewart is as an actor. So really good episode. I loved it.
Two sidebars. One, if you want to hear what Patrick Stewart is capable of, listen to the audiobook of A Christmas Carol with him
Okay, I
reading
thought
it.
you were gonna say
And
Macbeth or
nope,
yeah.
nope, A Christmas Carol and him doing all of the characters.
Okay, I have
It
to check
is
that out.
phenomenal. So,
Yeah,
but what Q was interesting. I mean, he shows
yeah.
up at random times. I did actually appreciate how they wrapped up the Q storyline in season 2 of Picard.
I didn't like it too much, but I don't think they really did the character justice. But
Yeah.
I get what you're saying. They did wrap it
Yeah.
up though.
All right, I get to do my number 1 first.
Okay, wait,
You
that was your
ready?
number. Okay, yeah, I did number 2. So you're
Yep.
number 1. Okay,
All right.
and I called dibs on mine. So
Yeah.
he said it wasn't that one.
We don't have overlap then, because
No,
my favorite one is Darmok.
right. So I kind of had a feeling that was
Yep.
gonna come up because I remember you and Charles Scott that we worked with quoting this episode a lot because I think it's one of his favorites too.
Darmok and Jalad at Tanagra,
Yeah.
with sails unfurled when the walls fell. So here's the backstory if you haven't watched this or haven't watched it in a while. So there's a race of people that nobody has ever been able to communicate with, and the Enterprise is tasked to go out to try and establish communication. And the reason they can't, you find this out over the course of the episode, is that they are using their history and
Mhm.
stories of their history to communicate. Like sails unfurled means at the end, the alien race says with sails unfurled, and that means, go to warp and let's leave,
Yeah.
kind of thing. So there's all of this inferred meaning in a single phrase, and so they show up and they really need their help and just can't communicate, and they get so frustrated that they beam their leader and Picard down to a foreign planet with a species that can basically just, with a single alien that can just basically kill them. So they're
Right.
thrust together. They have to figure out how to work together, and they have to figure out how to communicate. And so, by far, one of my favorite episodes, and if you want to go deep into meaning, talking about how we can overcome differences and how our differences can make us stronger if we seek to understand each other, and all of those different kinds of things.
Mhm.
So that is absolutely my favorite episode, or at least the one I remember absolutely the most, of Star Trek: The Next Generation. And it's kind of
Right.
one that's a little bit out there, but I really, really enjoyed that
Right.
one.
Right. That was a good one, and I kind of had a feeling because we talked about that episode before. You, Charles,
Yep.
and I talked about that one, and you talked about how much you like that one. So yeah, that was not too much of a surprise. I kind of figured that one was going to make the list. If not, it was in your top 5.
Yep.
So my number 1, and I didn't realize this until when I was looking at some information about it. It's a lot of people's number 1, and that's yesterday's Enterprise. And I love this episode for a bunch of different reasons. But one, it fills in some of the history between these different the different Enterprises ships, right? It introduces the Enterprise C, so it just fills in some lore. So you get kind of a backstory between what happened, at least with some of the ships between Kirk and Spock and everyone, and Picard and Riker and them. You get one more ship with some history and stuff with it. Um, it brought back one of the beloved characters, which is Natasha Yar, who died in they killed her off season 1 or season 2.
She
I
was
don't remember exactly.
originally a Romulan.
In the Next Generation, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
She played a Romulan at one point, and then she came back. Same actress, anyway,
Yeah.
right? Came back.
Denise Crosby. Right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
So, and that brings me back to another thing that allowed her, that kind of opened the door to be able to allow her to come back to play a recurring character, which is a half Romulan, half human daughter of Tasha Yar.
Yeah.
So that was pretty cool. The theme of the episode too was real heavy, was real. The Federation was at war with the Klingons. They were losing the war. Just real heavy. It dealt with, sending people to certain death and sacrificing yourself for the greater good. And I remember seeing this as a child, like, man, this was really a heavy episode. Well, again, we fast forward to today, and again, looking for information and stuff. It turns out this is a lot of people's favorite episode. So
Yeah.
yesterday's Enterprise, and again, we really get to see Whoopi Goldberg, her character Guinan, really act too. And again,
Yeah.
like I mentioned earlier, her and Picard, they're just dynamite when they have that chemistry together. And the episode starts off with her, and she's like looking around, like
This is not
something's not
right.
right. Yeah,
Yeah.
something's not right. And she goes to the bridge, and she's like, "Well, no, this is not right. What's going on?" And she sees Tasha, and she's like, "Wait, I went to your funeral." So if we don't know part of the lore with Guinan's character, her race kind of lives outside of space time, even though they're in the present with us, right? They kind of the time is not linear for them, and without getting too nerdy about
Right.
her specific race, whenever there's some kind of issue with time or stuff like that, they can sense that. They know when people are out of place or not from that time period or not from. So she immediately knew something wasn't right, and everyone else had to take her word for it. And she built relationships with Picard and other people, and they trusted her enough to know that what she was saying was true, and had to end up going back and sacrifices himself to fix the
Yeah.
timeline, basically.
Is this the one where Tasha goes back with them?
Right, she goes back,
Yeah, she
and
chooses because her and the
yep,
captain had some chemistry there.
right, and so she chooses to go back. So again, I said they opened up the door. So supposedly she went back, which we thought was sudden death. Right, they were going back to certain death
Right.
when they go back because the ship was going to explode. But apparently was actually captured and taken hostage by the Romulans, and that's how her half Romulan, half human daughter um, became. And that's all part of the what do they call it, the fandom or
Yeah.
whatever. But
Yep.
yeah, that really good episode, and again, it turns out to be a lot of people's favorite episode. So yesterday Enterprise is my number one pick.
Well, we had no overlap, which is
No.
cool.
What
But
about you?
here's
Have
my
any honorable mentions?
here's my honorable mention. So you got
Okay.
to put Best of Both Worlds 1 and 2, parts
Yep.
1 and 2, right? You have
Yep.
to put
Definitely.
those in there, and that was really cool to see Riker kind of come out of himself, right, and come
Yep.
out from underneath the shadow of Picard. And actually, I love that Riker is not under Picard's shadow at all in the Picard series. Any of the times he shows up.
Right.
So
Right. Yeah. He
yeah,
really became his own character, and I
yep,
always hope for a spinoff of Captain Riker. When he was, you
yeah.
know, young in his prime and stuff. Now I don't know if he would be up for a show like that now, but
No,
yeah.
but I mean, because we know that Picard becomes an admiral, so
Yes.
Riker had to go on to have his own ship and stuff like that. So anyway, so that was one, and then the other one is Chain of Command, which was also a two-parter. So they relieve Picard of command of the Enterprise,
Right.
and he and Crusher, I think again, and somebody else, they go on a Black Ops mission into Cardassian territory.
Right. Yep.
And he gets captured. And I just remember them torturing him and torturing him and torturing him and torturing him. And they were trying to get him to say that there were
3 lights or something like that.
yeah. And
Yep.
instead, at the very end, when they're letting him go, he turns around, looks at him, and goes, "There are 4 lights."
Right. I
Yeah.
remember that.
Right.
Yeah, really good episode. So one of my honorable mentions, I don't remember the name of it. I'm searching for it now. But it was the Enterprise was caught in like a time loop, a temporal loop or something like that. Like a Groundhog Day kind of thing. But the ship kept getting destroyed over and over again. And I remember this episode because it starts off, you
Cause and
know,
effect.
cause and effect. That's it.
Yeah.
And it starts off with, or there's a red alert. Everyone's scrambling around the ship. They don't know what's going on. They're trying to fix it. And you just see the ship just lose, uh, it just loses like propulsion and it goes into a spin and just explode. And I remember seeing that as a child, like, what just happened? Like, what's going
Yeah.
on? And then we see it like several times over and over again through the show. But yeah, watching the Enterprise get destroyed was pretty traumatizing, and yeah, that ended up on my so cause and effect is one of my honorable mentions.
Yeah, I like those when they make adjustments. Stargate itself did it at the very end where they had to do a temporal thing, and then Teal'c was the only one that had the memories, and he
Right,
couldn't tell anybody. And they were trying to get him to say what happened, who did I end up with, blah blah blah, and he's like, nope, not telling. There's one on Star Trek when Data is the only one that ends up with knowing what happened, and
right,
they end up getting him to tell them, which then causes them to get destroyed again. So then they have to go back through. And he's like, "Who ordered you not to tell me? You did, sir."
right.
You know.
Yep.
And in a couple of the books I read, there's always seems to be this thing where it's like, we're okay helping, but you can't know that we helped, right? That kind of stuff. So
Yeah, the prime directive kind of thing. Yeah.
yeah. Anyway,
All right. Any other one? Oh,
nope,
here's
no,
one. So the one with Sarek and Spock and all of those. So the unification one, that was a good one. I believe that was a two part episode. That was a good one because it brought Leonard Nimoy back to play Spock, not how they kind of shoehorned in Scotty. Um, they shoehorned in on the first episode. Who was it? McCoy. Spock actually played Spock, and he actually played a good role in the Next Generation. So that was exciting to have that character back in the time frame, right? It wasn't some kind of weird Scotty being stuck in the transporter. Remember that he was stuck in as a transport. What did he call it? The data stream, and he kind of preserved himself and brought himself back. So he was kind of a man out of time. Um, McCoy, when he was on there, they made him up. He's already an old man, but they made him up to seem like he was like 130 years old and he's walking. No, this was Spock who lives, longer than humans because he's Vulcan, but it was just a continuation of his storyline.
yeah.
And I thought that was a good one. So,
I also like the ones like the one when Worf is branded as a traitor, and even though he wasn't, but he's willing to do it for the for the best of the Klingon people. And
right, right,
Picard's always getting pulled in. I think in that one he was the Chadich or whatever it was.
right.
I don't speak
Like
Klingon.
his representative or something like that. Yeah, that was a
Yep.
good one too.
And then the one where Picard's got to choose the next ruler of the Klingon Empire. That one was good. And then the other one, I forgot about how good this one was. Another one with Q, which was Tapestry. But it's the one where he sends Picard back, and he's back as a science officer and elected not to get in the fight that ruined his heart.
Right. The
And
Nausicaan stabbed him in the back with that long
yeah, yeah.
blade and went through his heart. Yep.
Yeah, so he
Good one.
elects not to do that, and he's this really wussy science officer that's never out for command, and it was the exact opposite of who you expect Picard to be. And then Q gives him a chance to go back, and he gets stabbed, and he's stabbed and laying there with his big old hunk of knife through his heart,
Right.
just laughing, just
Laughing. Yeah.
chuckling, right?
Yep. Which is
So
not the Picard that we're familiar with, but going back and seeing the person he was,
yeah,
it all kind of made him who he is,
yep.
at the current thing. Yeah, that was a good one. So
All
okay,
right,
well, yeah, that was all I had. That was a fun one. I wish we could have did that with Twilight Zone because there are some really good Twilight Zone episodes, and I know you say you remember it watching some, but you hadn't watched any the original ones, the Rod Serling ones, as an adult. You hadn't watched any.
no, nope.
Acting was
So
different back then. Oh man, they were really dramatic. They were really heavy. And if you ever have some free time, just go back and watch. I would say find a top 10 list. Right, there are
can
tons of them. You can Google
can
top
you
10 Twilight Zone
define
episodes.
free time for me, because
Right.
I don't understand what that means. I'm not sure you do either,
First
considering
night.
that you haven't watched the next season of Picard yet. So
I know, and I managed to watch Fallout because I was excited for it, but I'm still just as excited for Picard and so first night when you get in the trailer and you guys get to the campground and you're like, okay, we finally made it. Let me put on an episode of Twilight Zone, the original one. But find a
yeah,
top 10 list and watch those top 10 episodes and just see those. They were really good
we'll
for
see.
sci-fi.
We'll see.
Yep.
That's all I'm committing to is I'll
Right.
consider it.
All right, folks. Well, thanks for listening. And again, if you have any questions or if you want to share with us your top 3 picks, just put them down in the comments and let us know why you picked those and why they really stood out to you.
All right, hit that subscribe button. Let us know how we're doing, and we'll talk to you next week. I'm sure we'll have something besides iPads for a bonus episode next week.
Yeah, we'll see.